in our time zone. It's 5 o'clock here in India, still a little bit light out there. If you're in Americas, you're probably just getting up or are still half asleep. In Europe, you are in our teacher's time zone. We have today Venerable Jamyang as our guest teacher. And thank you so much, Venerable Jamyang, for accepting again. I think you were in all of our Days of Miracle programs, I think. So it's such an honor to have you with us, such a pleasure. And whoever is not familiar with Venerable Jamyang yet, may I just introduce very quickly. So Venerable Jamyang comes from the Netherlands and then met the Dharma, I believe, here at our very own Tushita in 97, I believe, isn't it? And then we did a retreat here together. I think it changes many lives. We did the Vajrasattva retreat together, just to do a little bit of advertisement. Lama Yeshe said everybody should do one Vajrasattva retreat in their lifetime. If you do it at Tushita or Kopan or anywhere in the world, that doesn't matter. But just, you know, these little things. And then Venerable Jamyang got ordained right after, I think, in 2000, right? Well done. And then went to Instituto Lama Tsongkhapa, our sister center. Of course, you did the basic program in our sister center in Australia, Chen Resik Institute, right?
That's right.
The 5-year basic program. I'm just dropping in all these things so people hear what FPMT has to offer, right? And then you became the SPC, the Spiritual Program Coordinator in Adelaide, I believe, in Buddha House. And then Lama Zopa Rinpoche asked you to do the master program in Instituto Lama Tsongkhapa, our 7-year program there, right? Right now,
yes,
is running there. And then you taught all around the world, also at Tushita, and then were requested to go to Nalanda. You are, yes, in our sister monastery, beautiful place in France, Nalanda Monastery, and you are the assistant teacher there. Get me, for the master program. What you call it? I'm so sorry.
Teaching assistant.
Teacher assistant for the master program. 2nd year.
3rd year.
Yes, time flies, 3rd year already.
Yeah.
Amazing, wonderful. Thank you so much. We know you have a very busy schedule there. You started already a few weeks ago after the breaks, the winter break. Thank you so much for joining us again. Yes.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me, and thank you for Tushita for organizing this wonderful event to start the new year, and for making these teachings available. And I feel very honored that I can be here with you today. So today we're going to talk about, or I'm going to talk about, about bouncing back from adversity. And so that is something that is very human. No, it's like everybody experiences adversity in their life. And so before starting, I would like to ask you something, and I would like to ask you to think about a moment in your life when something truly shook you. Maybe something hurt you deeply, or something that happened to you and that changed you. And especially something that you did not choose, something that just came to you. Maybe it was a loss, maybe it was a rejection, maybe it was an uncertainty. So think about that and then ask yourself, what made the difference between me being broken by that experience or me being shaped by it? How did you live through that experience? How did you go when something like that happened to you? And then we can see that, and maybe you have observed that yourself, that some people, they recover quite quickly, while other people have difficulties overcoming adversities. They need a lot of time to digest what happened to them. And so I'm kind of fascinated by that. Like, what is it that some people can do it easily? Some people have trouble working through adversities. And what even is more fascinating is if we look into the animal realm and see how animals deal with things. With, for instance, being chased. For instance, you have a deer being chased by a tiger. And the deer is in fear, runs away, sprints away, and then is able to avoid the attack. And then you see, if you wait 10 minutes, half an hour, at a certain point, you see that the deer is shaking the whole body, and it's shaking off the experience. And then it continues life as if nothing has happened. And so, I mean, imagine that we could do that, no? That we could just shake it off. But unfortunately, our mind doesn't work like that. I do think that our nervous system has the capacity to do that. But there is something in us that makes it more difficult. We cannot do that reset of the nerve system so quickly. So that is not because we are weak, but that is because we have this intellectual mind, we have this thinking mind, which means that we can remember and we can replay the event over and over in our mind. And then we can imagine what might happen, what can happen again. We see maybe enemies where they're not. We interpret things in a way that is triggering the event again. And then we strongly identify with what happened. Oh my God, me, somebody's after me. I have to protect me. And so that mind is a mind that traps us in that experience and makes that we relive things again and again, and makes it difficult to come out of the experience. But at the same time, we also know from Buddha's teachings that that is the mind that can liberate us, right? It is the same mind. So today we will explore a little bit how can we use that same mind that is trapping us? And we look a little bit in how it is trapping us. How can that same mind be the mind that is liberating us from holding on to an experience and then kind of resetting the body and the mind to start fresh again? And so we explore that not to find a way to avoid pain. Right? We all know that we cannot avoid pain. Pain happens to everyone. Sometimes, maybe some people have it more often, but pain happens due to karma. We are talking also not in order to suppress the suffering, in order to get away from it. But we are looking into it to find a way how we can walk through adversity without being swept away by it. So that is a little bit what I would like to do today. And then what we're going to start with is that we look into what does it actually mean, bouncing back, what are we talking about? And then how do we create the capacity to bounce back? What qualities can help us? What kind of skills can help us? How does perspective help us? And how can we use the Dharma to develop this strength? Because I do think that being able to bounce back is a strength, an inner strength that we can develop. And then while we go through that, we also look into that mind that traps us, right? That mind that interferes with bouncing back and how we can be caught up in that. We also discuss that. And so I want to leave a lot of space for questions, or maybe sometimes I will ask you a question you can answer in the chat. I don't know how that will go, but we can give it a try so that it is not just me talking to you, but it is actually something that what we talk about today is something that you can connect with and that you can relate to within yourself. And hopefully that it gives you some kind of perspective and tools that you can use when adversities happen to you, or that you can use in order to prepare the mind for when adversities happen. Okay. So then we can think about what is, I just have not really a clear vision of the chats. Kimpen, are you gonna keep checking that, or how shall we do that? I will sometimes look into the chat.
Seems
But
good.
if there are important questions, or then please sometimes make me aware of that.
Yeah,
Is
sure.
that all right?
Yes, of
Okay.
course.
Thank you. So then what is bouncing back? Bouncing back means that we return back to normal, back to our normal natural state after a difficult event. It means that whatever happens to us, that we are able to let it go, and that we start again fresh, not with things that we still hold on to, but we completely let it go. And so then we can wonder, is that something that we should know naturally, or is that because we can see some people have that quality more than other people? Or is it something that we need to learn, right? Or is it something that we can learn? And then we can go to our own experience. And I don't know how your year was last year, 2025, but I've heard from many people that it was quite a difficult year, not easy. And people who experienced difficulty, they had not just one difficulty, they had one after the other, after the other. It was like no end to that. So we can think about what was your biggest challenge last year? And how did you cope? And then before you had restored your own system or your own mind from one experience, before you were restored, the second one came, how did that affect you? Was that more difficult to experience? And then did it take you longer to recover from that? And how did you recover? How did you bounce back? And in bouncing back, what has helped you the most? Just think about that. And if you feel that you want to share something about that in the chat, feel free to do so. And then we can imagine that if we would have the skill to bounce back when something sweeps us off our feet, when something hurts us deeply, if we have that skill, how that would change our life, how that would improve our life. So also think about that. Right? I think we would be so much freer, so much maybe happier. And so then there are a few people in the chat who give their way of being with adversities, thinking that this too shall pass, and what can I learn from this when difficulties arise? And these are things that will come back later in the talk, like how can we use the Dharma in order to be with adversities? Praying to Tara. Definitely. So what is the Buddhist framework? What does the Buddhist framework give us? And then we can think about the first teaching of the Buddha, in which the Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths, which is actually teaching us about life. It teaches us the truth about life that we somehow forgot or never knew or can't see. It teaches us that life is in the nature of suffering. And by understanding the suffering, we can ask, where is the suffering coming from? What is the cause of this suffering? And by knowing the cause, we can think about, is it possible to become free of this cause? And when we see that we can be free of this cause, then we can think, what kind of path do I need to go in order to develop that freedom of that suffering? So their teaching I find always very, very helpful, because it helps us to, follow an approach to whatever we experience in life that is going to help us to find a way to be with it, to deal with it, and to become completely free of it, if possible. And within that, understanding how the mind works is really an important foundation. Without understanding how the mind works, if you all have listened a little bit to Buddhism, we know that we're all caught up in delusions. We're all caught up in our own reactive mind. And that reactive mind is coming from a self-grasping mind. And that self-grasping mind is totally out of touch with reality. That self-grasping mind is experiencing reality in the opposite way as that reality actually exists. And so when then we react with, for instance, attachment and aversion or anger, these reactions actually do the opposite of what they promise us to do, but also the opposite of what we actually want to achieve in our mind. And so understanding the mind, really deeply understanding the mind, will give us the strength to address this belief in the deceptive nature of the mind and start doing things differently that initially will feel as, this feels like counterintuitive. I have to go against my own nature. My nature says I should fight. My nature says I should run away. My nature says, and then we have to say, wait a minute, is that really true? Is that really true that is the best reaction in this moment? And then, we need to analyze. And the more we know about the mind, the more we will challenge our own innate belief that these delusions are helpful and that they will save us or they will get us out of a difficult situation. And so then also the more willing we are in order to address these mistakes by kind of re-educating our mind, teaching our mind about reality, teaching our mind about the disadvantages of these delusions or following the delusions, teaching our mind what is possible. How can we be in the situation that is connected to reality and that is going to be truly beneficial, that is truly going to help us to recover or to come out of that situation? And so if we apply that to the mind, and in order to do that, we need to know the mind, and then we need to train the mind. The more we train our mind, the better we can cope when things happen to us, and the less we will suffer when things happen to us. Right? And that is what we're actually all after. We want to become free of that suffering, and we want to experience more happiness. And so then in order to understand what is happening in the mind when adversity hits us, we can look at what is actually going on, right? How is our initial reaction? And I would say that is for everyone the same, in the sense that even if you have a very trained mind, as long as we have not seen the nature of reality directly, we will all react the same. It's like that reaction is there, that is there automatically, that is there since beginningless time, and so it's there. Then how we prolong that, we can train our mind. We can help our mind not to keep hanging in that. So what happens with the mind when we experience adversity? So first there is the event itself. And I'm going to talk about an unpleasant experience, whether that is a deep hurt, whether that is a deep loss, whether that is something that is shaking our world, unsettling us, whether that is throwing us in a situation that we feel we have, very unexpected and completely messing us up our life. we have to say these events, we are not in charge. You know, they happen to us. They happen to us. And no, in Buddhism, we know they happen to us due to karma. They happen to us due to causes and conditions. We often think that karma is kind of negative, right? It's like when bad things happen, that is kind of negative. But I've also heard Lama Zopa talk about when negative things happen to us, that can actually be an amazing opportunity, or actually the manifestation of a deep purification that is happening due to having collected a lot of merit. So due to having created so much good karma, you know, we have the merit in order to purify deep layers of negative karma. And when we do that in this human body, we might save ourselves from going to bad rebirth for many, many, many lifetimes, right? So an unpleasant experience is not necessarily something negative, but it is still unpleasant, right? It hurts, it confuses us, it creates pain. And so when we experience that, the first reaction that we have, which is an emotional reaction, over which we have no power, it happens automatically. The first reaction is, I want to be separated from this. So that we do that with our aversion. Aversion tries to remove ourselves or the sense of me from the experience that we have. And that aversion can be just an aversion, but if something is really shaking our life, it becomes agitation, it becomes anger. And then part of that might also be the feeling of fear that arises in the mind and then triggers even more aversion. So that wish to be separated from the event. And if the event is really, or that unpleasant experience is really intense, you know, it's like we have to separate because we can't cope. And when we cannot cope, you know, that aversion that arises is the mechanism that helps us to cope, that says, I'll separate you from that negative feeling. Right? That is how it looks like. We have to investigate if that is really true. I do think that what it does is it makes that feeling cannot arise in the mind. It cannot fully arise in the mind. So we kind of, aversion is kind of suppressing the feeling, and is kind of cutting off us experiencing what we are feeling. And so that mind that is trying to suppress, the mind that is trying to separate us from that negativity, if we look into what the kind of thoughts that are coming in dependence upon that mind, then we can see that that mind will go over what just happened to us again and again and again. And it is not that we go over it and we think, wow, that just happened to me. I have to accept that. No, what we are doing is we are thinking, what should I have done so that that would not have happened to me? Right? Or we are thinking in a way that we are trying to undo it in the mind as if it never happened, you know, like if I had done that, it would not have happened. If I had done that, if it would not have happened, if I would just not have gone there. And if I had left my home 5 minutes later, and if I had, you know, so when we have a mind like that, it tries to undo what we're actually experiencing, or we are trying to change what has happened in the past. And so when the mind is occupied in that, that is actually the mechanism that says, I cannot cope with what I'm feeling. It is too much. I'm overwhelmed if I would really feel all this. I can't face what is happening to me. Do you recognize this? And so then my mind is often really stuck on trying, to understand how situations come about instead of coming back to the present. Yes. And so the mind, that's a very good comment, instead of coming back to the present. And so what we can see is that that mind is not in the present. that mind cannot bear the present moment. And so, and we already can see a little bit the solution there, no? It's if we cannot bear being in the present moment, we keep fueling that mind that wants to separate from it. Another way of trying to separate from it is that we use our distractive mind, which is more related to attachment, you know, and which is also maybe more related to the future. So the mind that, for instance, thinks when something bad happens to us, like, oh my God, then how do I going to do this in the future? How do I find the money? Where do I get a job? How do I find another partner? How do I going to cope by being alone? All these questions about the future, right? Which is more a kind of an anxiety that is coming from a fear of not being able to get what you need, and therefore more connected to attachment. But then we go over all kinds of scenarios in order to, I think it is a kind of trying to pacify the mind, or trying to help the mind, or, you know, trying to think, if I can see a solution in the future, I will calm down in the present moment. It's kind of that. And I actually wonder if that is really true, right? We often distract ourselves from unpleasant experiences with all kinds of entertainment in order to separate us from that unpleasantness. But if we look, if that really helps, you know, I'm pretty sure that most of you say, no, actually, the moment I stop with that distraction, the unpleasantness is still there. You know, it is just a cover-up of that unpleasantness. And so we can say there is an event, and then independence upon that event, we have an unpleasant feeling arising in the mind. And then independence on that, we have that mental engagement that is trying, based on these delusions, trying to separate us from that event. And so that mind that is reacting is an emotional mind, right? It's not a rational mind. And the moment that that mind arises, we kind of, the rational mind is out. We don't have access anymore to that rational mind, right? All kinds of craziness comes to our mind and we believe it. And even if part of us knows, oh, this is not really true, you know, it is so strong that we get caught up in it and kind of believe it, or we follow it, or we cannot let go of it, because that rational mind has no more hold over us. The emotions have taken over. And so being able to bounce back means that we are able to actually return to our natural, our normal condition after a difficult situation. And when we are still stuck in that unpleasantness and in that reactiveness, you know, we have to say, I'm not bouncing back. I'm just surviving. I'm still fighting what just has happened to me, right? Bouncing back means that I first say, okay, I accept this really has happened to me, and I have to make peace with that. And then from there, I have like a kind of a platform that is free from any destructive emotion, any delusion. And then from that platform, I can look into my life, and then I can start again. So then my question is, what do we need in order to be able to bounce back, right? I'm going to look if there's another comment, or if there is another question. Oops. Why me is tracing the past. Yes. Yes. So learning to sit with unpleasant feelings is a very big one. And yes, when the unpleasantness is too big, right, then we use that distraction in order to cope with it. And so when I say we go back to normal, yeah, I mean, that is a good question. What is normal, right? Because it can be, I mean, if we look into how our mind works and how we come here to this planet in this human body, we are not coming with a clean slate, right? We already have, we're coming here due to the forces of karma and delusions. And we have a body that is operating from these karma and delusions. And so if we're going to go back to normal, is that karma and delusions? And I think it depends where we are on the path. And to a certain extent, we have to say yes. But what we can learn is that we learn to let go of that fight and flight reaction that gets activated when we are in a very stressful situation. That fight and flight reaction is coming from that aversion. It's coming from our wish to be separated from that suffering. And so we can learn to drop that, right, as much as we can. And then when we practice the Dharma, we might actually find that on more subtle levels, we still have fight and flight reactions that we hadn't seen before, and that our normal is actually more subdued than we have had experienced before in our life, right? So can we completely remove these reactions and that reactivity? I think until we realize the nature of reality, we are still working on that. It's this part of our how that all-pervasive compounded suffering, these patterns of reacting and the connection with the self-grasping mind. This is how we are programmed. And so slowly we have to undo that, but that takes time, you know. So the normal is, for me, what we knew before the event. And then from there we can improve further by practicing the Dharma. And so if we see that bouncing back has, if we look into how things happen to us, right? Something negative happens to us, then there is first the unpleasant feeling, and then there is the reaction to the unpleasant feeling. And so we can look at both. What can we do with this? Yeah. So we know that we cannot change what happens to us. I mean, to a certain extent, we can do things, right? It's like if we live a virtuous life, we create a condition that negative karma can less easy ripen, you know, so painful events will less easily ripen. But it's not a guarantee. As I just mentioned, the ripening of negative karma can also be the result of having accumulated enough virtue to be able to purify that negative karma. So I'm going to go with, I'm not going to touch that. I feel like you can put it in place yourself, but things happen to us. Things happen to us. And then what we have is we have that, first the feeling that arises in the mind. And then on top of that, we have our reaction to the feeling that arises in the mind. And so then we can see what we can do in order to get quicker through the experience that we have, in order to be able to let go of whatever has happened to us and start again. And so in order to be able to do that, we first, I think, need to learn how to be with unpleasant experiences. And I've spoken about this before. I do think that that is kind of something that we are not encouraged to do in life in this time and age. We are actually encouraged to do the opposite. And I can see that, you know, we can even use the Dharma in order to do the opposite, in order to move away from unpleasant experiences. But the more I study and the more I meditate, the more I feel that actually by connecting with these unpleasant experiences and learning how to be with them, my reaction to these unpleasant experiences just disappears. And so then the mind becomes naturally, I develop a capacity in which I can bear that suffering. And I develop a mind that doesn't have the need to constantly react. So how to be with unpleasant experiences. And then what we can also do is, how can I see that experience in a certain perspective? So how can we be with an unpleasant experience? So when negative things happen, there is the feeling, and then there is the reaction. There is the mental engagement. We tell ourselves stories, right? We tell ourselves stories how we can change it. And so one way to deal with that is to say to ourselves, but that actually happened. That just happened to you. Whether you like it or not, it just happened to you. You have to deal with it. We have to deal with it. So how do we cut off our stories, right? And I think one way that we can do that is that one way is to say it has happened to you. And another way is that we take some distance from the stories and that we become the observer. I'm making up all these stories. That must mean that I have experienced something that is too big to fully accept and feel in this moment. And so then we already acknowledge part of the truth, right? When we can do that. So stopping these stories. Maybe we hear ourselves calling a friend, you know, oh, this and this and this and this and this and this. And we go over again and again and again and again. And then we finish. And then half an hour later, after we hang up, we feel like, oh, it is coming again. And I have to call another friend. And we repeat the whole thing. So if we can catch ourselves there and say, just repeating the story is not going to make the story away. It's not going to make the feeling away. How can I ask for help in order to be able to be with the story, in order to be able to digest what is going on? And so beside that, but stopping of the stories, we need to be able to look at the aversion or even the attachment and reflect on it, you know, how they are deceptive, how they are giving us the opposite of what we actually what we actually wish to achieve. And I'm just looking at my notes So with that mental engagement, I go back a little bit because I skipped something which I think is very important and very helpful. And it is kind of an easy tool, not when things happen to us, but something easy that we can practice again and again every day. And that is going to help us when negative things happen to us, or when bad things happen to us, or unpleasant things happen to us. And so that is, you know, this mind of mental engagement that is always in the future, or it is in the past, mainly in the past when bad things happen to us. And so in order to counteract that, the best tool is if we can bring that mind in the present moment. And in order to bring the mind in the present moment, we have these 4 close placement of mindfulness that I'm pretty sure many of you have learned about when you go to even introductory meditation classes, where you learn to be with the body, observe the body, do a body scan, or where you learn to be with the breath, watch the breath, whether that is at your abdomen or at your nostrils. Watch the feelings. That might be more difficult in this situation, but you could go back to the here and now, you know, and my body is in the here and now. My body is always in the here and now. My body is never in the past, never in the future. So being with the body, what do I feel? What's going on? What do I hear? What do I see right in front of me? How do I cope with that? Start to connect with that. What do I need to do? I heard recently that even in the military, right, when there are very stressful situations, and then they say when the cortisol goes up, what soldiers are trained to do is to engage in tasks. What do I need to do? I need to do the dishes. I need to clean my room. I need to whatever task needs to be done. You engage in that and you try to focus on that. That is a very fast way of reducing the stress in your body and your mind. And that is a very fast way for that cloud that arises in the mind when we have these delusions arising and all the mental engagement that comes with that. When they are in the mind, that cloud will disappear when we are really caught up in the present moment. And so that can be a training, right? And the military is part of the training. We can train our own mind. And we can start doing the training now. It's not something that we can learn when negative things happen to us, right? It's like you have never done mindfulness and then something negative happens and then you say, now I should stay in the present moment. I guarantee you, your mind will not, because your mind is so used to be distracted from that, right? The mind is, we're living constantly with a distracted mind. So bringing the mind back, we can only do that when we train the mind. Right? And then the better we know how to do that, that is one of the things that can help us when negative events happen. That's one of the things. Then another thing is, how much suffering can I bear? Right? If I have a great capacity to bear suffering, my mind doesn't get affected. My mind doesn't react. There is a negative feeling, but I not necessarily get caught up in the reaction to that negative feeling. True. Bearing the suffering. If things fall apart and we can keep the mind cool, just another event that happens. Right? There are people who have that capacity. And I think we can learn that by learning how to be with negative feelings, how to be with unpleasant feelings. I shouldn't call them negative. I think they're just unpleasant. There's something that we do not like. There's something that we don't want to be with. And so in order not to be with them, we have this aversion reaction. But that aversion creates, if you investigate it, only more suffering. Yeah, and maybe that is too much for now to really go into that, why it is like that. But that is what the aversion is actually doing. It creates the delusion or the perspective of, I'm going to separate you from suffering. But actually what we suffer most from is from our resistance to unpleasant feelings, from our resistance to accepting what happened. Accepting for me is that we can fully feel what actually happened. That we can fully experience what actually happened. And so in order to be able to develop that capacity of sitting with unpleasant feelings, we can apply what we practice when we practice self-compassion. And there are three things that contains. One is that we are mindful of the feeling. And we already saw that before, that when we are bringing the mind to the present moment, we can also become mindful of the feelings that are arising in the mind. In the beginning, it might be too much, so you focus on maybe more material things. And there is a kind of a distraction in it, but at the same time, there is a kind of connection with reality at the same time. And so that might be the best solution in order to create a condition that you then, after that, you can deal with what you're actually feeling. And so then when you start to connect with the feeling, you're mindful of the feeling. You're mindful, you can feel in your body where it's hurting. You can feel in your body how you are messed up, how you are confused, how you feel threatened, whatever you're experiencing in your body. And so if we, instead of having this aversion, create a kind of curiosity for that and say, what is that actually? What is that feeling there? You know, oh my God, it feels like my stomach is going to be penetrated, or it feels like something is burning in my heart, or it feels like, you know, we have these feelings. What is that actually? And if you want, you put your hands on it and you breathe. You breathe in that feeling. You stay with it and you say, this is mine, right? What happened to me is my karma, my portion of shitty events that happen on this planet Earth to human beings. And I have to take it. It's mine. It came to me, so it's mine. So I hold it and I try to connect with it with curiosity and say, what is life bringing me today? And then the way that I want to be with myself when I do that, I want to be with myself with loving kindness, with talking gently and soothing to myself, because I suffer, right? This is something that is very difficult for many of us. I know that many of us have, you know, when we experience something unpleasant, in order to be separated from it, we kind of beat ourselves up, tell ourselves how stupid we are that we let that happen, or tell ourselves what a losers we are, or whatever, something negative, which I think is part of the attempt to be separated from the suffering. It's part of the aversion. It is an anger reaction to ourselves. It's our attempt to separate from the suffering. But if we look what that does to us, it's so painful, you know? Just imagine somebody in your environment who goes through suffering, what you just have experienced, and you take a stick and you start beating them up and you say, you're so stupid that you let that happen to you. We would never do that. We would not do that with anyone, but we do that with ourselves. This is like the quality of anger and aversion, what it is doing in the mind. So we can change that. We can change that inner voice. And instead of talking harshly to ourselves, we can start talking kindly to ourselves. We can be supportive of ourselves, and we can say, I know that you're going through a lot of suffering, you know, and I'm here with you. We can talk to ourselves as if we are talking to our best friend. And if we find it difficult in the beginning to do that with ourselves, visualize that whatever you experience, your best friend is experiencing, and your best friend is telling you about it. And so what do you say to your best friend? You never tell them that they're losers, no? You say, I'm so sorry that this is happening to you. And we say that with kindness. True. Just imagine what that would be if we can do that. And then in that soothing, you know, depending on your capacity, depending on how much practice that you have done, you can think about reality. You can contemplate the nature of reality, as I just saw somebody in the chat saying that. We can think about impermanence, you know, that things change all the time. And the event that just happened is a change. But it's not the end, right? Also, this event will change. Also, what I'm feeling will change. Also, the way I'm reacting inside will change. My confusion will change. All that will change. And we can think about karma, although I prefer to leave the karma a little bit till we come out more out of the event, more out of our pain, you know, because sometimes karma feels to us as a punishment. And so if it is like that, then I would say, please don't think about karma in this point. Just be kind to yourself. We also don't say to our friends, this is just your karma, you know. It's not helpful. It's actually very painful. And I find it, yeah, too painful. Don't do that. We can think about other things, how we can apply the Dharma in other ways. We can think about, you know, wow, life threw something on my plate, which feels really unpleasant. But what if I could learn something from that? What if I could have some benefit? What if I could gain something from this? Right? Maybe this is the best opportunity that is coming in my life. I have no idea where my life is going. This happening to me, but maybe it is the best opportunity that I have. And especially when you are a regular practitioner, you know, I would say that you can have faith that this is bringing you an opportunity, right? This is coming as a result of your practice. This is going to move you forward, maybe in a direction that you don't know, maybe in a direction that you did not ask for, maybe in a direction that you never envisioned for yourself. But once you're out of it, or once you're at the other side of it, you might look back and think, wow, that was the best thing that could ever have happened to me. Right? And we know this from stories from people. And so we can remind ourselves while we go through this, you know, and maybe when it helps you to soothe, please use it. Anything that helps you to soothe your suffering, your unpleasantness, use it. And so when we can do that, we already have an attitude in the mind that has changed from trying to accept to, no, it does, we have changed it from wanting to change what happened to us in allowing it to have happened to us, trying to accept it. Right? And then we can remember that you know, one thing that happens in the mind when we have these unpleasant experiences, and when aversion is in the mind, aversion tries to separate us from the event, from the feeling, not from the event, from the feeling. But sometimes it looks like it tries to separate us from the event as well, but that is like impossible. But with that separation comes also that suffering part of us feels separated from everything else in humanity, from everybody else. It's like we are alone in that, separated, right? That it's very strange. The more I think about it, it's so strange, you know. So in order to save us from experiencing that very painfulness, our mind kind of throws us into a loneliness, into a separation from the rest of humanity. And so then in order to change that, or in order to counteract that, we can remind ourselves, you're not alone. You're not alone. You could say to yourself, I'm here with you. Right? We are doing this together. And maybe it sounds a little bit schizophrenic, but it kind of helps if we speak to ourselves, right? It's okay what happened. It's not your fault, you know, just conditions brought us together. We will find a way out of this, you know. You are not alone. And another way to counteract that feeling of aloneness or that loneliness, we can think about, you know, I'm not the only person who is experiencing this in life. There's so many human beings who are going through a similar experience. And then we can go even to, if you have the capacity to say, you know what, I'm going to use this experience in order to not only take on my own suffering, but I will also take on the suffering of all human beings that experience something similar. And by doing that, I'm going to find a way to deal with it. And once I've found that, I think we become kind of a role model, you know, for people who go through something similar. Then when people who go through something similar, they see us, they somehow know this person knows what I'm talking about. This person has gone through that. This person knows how to do that, right? And so then by just having done it, other human beings can find their way in working through their difficult experiences. All right, now I'm going to look a little bit at if there's something in the chat and check in with you how you're feeling. And so someone says, when we have these difficult experiences then, and we come out of it, we always have learned something. And so we will be different than before. And that is so true. That is so true. Coping with illness. It's harder to bounce back when we are ill instead of one unpleasant emotion. Yes, that's true. Especially when it is an illness that is leading to death, no? And even from that, we can say, what can I learn from this? You know, and Lama Zopa, he many times he said, it's you should not be afraid of the cancer, but you should be afraid of the delusions that you generate in dependence upon the cancer. Because once you die, the cancer is gone. But the delusions that you have generated, you take with you. So you could use having any illness in order to purify your mind. You know, illness comes as a result of karma. It can be in our life as a result of karma. It can be there for a certain amount of time, and it can be there forever. We do not know, right? When things happen, how long they're going to stay, we do not know. But we do know that when I keep reacting to it, that I create more and more delusions in the mind. And that is not helpful. And I would even say that illness is coming from delusions, maybe not the delusions that you're having right there in that life, right? It can also be caused by delusions that we had in past lives and that we are purifying in this life. But it is based on delusions. So if I can be with that illness without generating more delusions, you give yourself the biggest gift, you know, whether you're going to die or not. We're all going to die, right? We don't know when. And then when we are ill, we think, oh, now I'm going to die. But I might die earlier than you being ill, right? We do not know. We are for sure that death is coming. And we are sure that the mind at the time of death is very important in what is coming after. So the more we can address our fear, our anxiety, our aversion, our not accepting, our tendency to wanting to change life, right? Nobody wants to be sick. Nobody wants to die. Nobody wants to, and then to say, but it's going to happen, right? I just don't know when. It's very difficult to make that change in the mind. Very, very difficult. But if we can do that, you give yourself such a big gift. And then I hope that is okay. Otherwise, put another question in the chat. And then someone says, I think sometimes you can catch the normal, peaceful, calm, and easy state of mind in the small and very short moments during, for instance, walking in nature, observing something so beautiful and pure like a flower. And then we can try to remember this as much as possible. Yes, that's true. And so connecting to, if you have a way that you can connect with a more natural state of mind where you feel peaceful and relaxed, and if walking in nature helps you with that, you know, that is an excellent way to deal with your stress or to, but I even would say build that up before negative things happen to you or before unpleasant things happen to you. Have the habit of going to nature, nourish that habit of going to nature, so that when something happens, you have a very strong connection there that you can tap into, and that can help you to kind of reset, right? Kind of go back to a place of relaxation within your own mind. So then somebody says, Sankita says, Venerable, isn't it true that all our emotions have an underlying energy and wisdom that we could harness? Please advise. I do think that when we have the courage to fully experience these unpleasant feelings, that it takes us to a place where we are not reactive anymore, right? As soon as we have fully experienced whatever is there to be experienced, there are no more emotional reactions to that feeling. Aversion is gone. And I think, as my experience is, as soon as that aversion is gone, I get to a state of mind where I suddenly see things in a very different light, you know? And I can sometimes see solutions that are good for both parties. It's not me and the other person anymore. It gives me an insight into reality in a way that is beyond me, that is not concerned about me anymore. Right? As long as I have aversion in the mind, as long as there are delusions in the mind, I'm concerned about me. I don't want to suffer. I want to be separated from it. And with that, I have a very unequanimous mind, right? I don't care so much about the other person. I mainly care about me, right? This is how we experience that. But once I'm out of that, once I have experienced that feeling and the delusions have subsided, then my mind can open up and I can think, oh, how can we do this for everyone so that it is best for everyone? I don't have that self-interest so much anymore. And so I do think that that is a wisdom energy that we can access once the delusions have subsided. Yes. So how do we differentiate between self-centeredness and self-compassion? That's a very good question. And then I continue a little bit and finish my talk, and then I come back to the rest of the questions. The difference between self-centeredness and self-compassion is the method that we use in order to become free from suffering. Self-centeredness uses aversion in order to become free from suffering, and well, self-compassion is using taking on the suffering in order to become free from the suffering, right? So one is pushing it away, the other one says, I'll take it on. So when we push suffering away and we use the aversion, we are feeding that self-grasping mind, that self-centered mind. But when we say, I take it on, you know, you're actually going to invite something that feels very threatening to yourself, you know? So I don't think that that is stimulating the self-centered mind. So self-compassion, you know, sometimes people hear then, so I should give myself whatever I need, right? I don't think self-compassion is that either, because then the self-grasping mind can be very easily come in, and we using our attachment to get what we want comes in, and then we call that self-compassion. I don't think that is it. Self-compassion is the wish that we are free from suffering. And the method that you use in order to become free of suffering is opposite to the method that your self-grasping mind is using. The self-grasping mind using aversion, self-compassion using taking on the suffering. You know, and I don't think that you have to worry that you are creating a bigger self-grasping mind when you do that. But of course, we have to, you know, stay alert and investigate. There might be something underlying, you know, part of your ego might. I don't know. I don't know. I would have to think about it. So I would have to think about it. So if we use this in order to be able to cope with the experience, right? And instead of kind of suppressing or separating us from the experience, we say, I'm gonna fully allow it to arise, you know, and we can cry, no problem, as long as we have the courage to feel it. And then we can say, what else can we do in order to create conditions so that when things happen to us, that we have a kind of a buffer that we can fall back to, that are ways of reflecting, of seeing reality, so that we can handle what is happening to us. And so then we can think about any of the Lhundup topics. We can think about any of the mind training techniques that we find in Buddhism. Because I think Buddhism, what Buddhism does, everything that Buddhism is talking about is the remedy against our deluded mind. It is the remedy that is counteracting that emotional mind that wants to have instant gratification, and that works with attachment and aversion, that first reaction to everything that we are feeling in every moment. What we are studying in Buddhism is completely the opposite. I think when you really see the essence of Buddhism, that's self-cherishing mind, which is the mind that reacts with attachment to pleasant experiences and that reacts with aversion to unpleasant experiences. That mind is the biggest problem that we have. That is the problem that we have, because it is our tool to find happiness and freedom from suffering. And what it is doing, it is doing totally the opposite of what we think it is doing. It is actually creating more suffering, more suffering, more suffering, brings no happiness, and it brings no freedom from suffering. And so everything in Buddhism that we learn counteracts that somehow. And we know that that mind is coming from self-grasping, right? And so the self-grasping mind we counteract by fully understanding and seeing the nature of reality. And it is said that all the teachings that the Buddha gave are for the sake of sentient beings understanding the nature of reality. Because when we understand the nature of reality, we become completely free of suffering. Right? So that self-grasping mind is what holds us into the suffering. Understanding the reality frees us from that self-grasping mind. Understanding reality, we can see that that self-grasping mind has no essence. And once we directly see that, it completely loses its power. And so then when it loses its power, the attachment and the aversion that arises in dependence on that mind cannot arise. It doesn't have any foundation anymore. So everything that we do in the Lhundup, all the mind training techniques are in order to kind of counteract the way that we are programmed. We are programmed to react automatically with the delusions. We are programmed to hold on to that self that we believe to exist in a way that it doesn't. And so with the Dharma, we completely undo that. We want to undo the programming that we have in our mind. And so when we go through the Lhundup topics, we learn everything from, I'll go there in a minute, what we can learn from that. So one time I was with teachings with Yang Rinpoche from Mitripa Institute, and he said, the Dharma is, it's not that the Dharma is going to help us not to experience any unpleasantness anymore. But what the Dharma does is when unpleasantness happens, it shows us, when the mind is trained, it is much easier to walk through that unpleasantness. So the mind is not swept away by that unpleasantness. We just keep walking straight to our goal. And I think that's so true, you know, because everything that we learn in the Dharma, it's like we create conditions that are beyond samsara, right? The purpose of studying and meditating on the Dharma is that we go beyond samsara. And it might take a while before we get truly beyond samsara, but everything that we are doing will move us in that direction. Right? It moves us in the direction of being out of samsara. Just hold on your question a little bit. I can't, Izar, I think is your name. Just hold it on a little bit, yeah. And so we can go through all the Lamrim topics and think, you know, by thinking about them, by reflecting on them, by meditating on them, by making them part of us. Although they might feel initially as a bit counterintuitive. Yes, they are, because they're very opposite to how we are programmed. But when we become more and more familiar with them, we create a mind that doesn't believe so much in how things present itself, that doesn't believe so much in how we react to things, that doesn't believe so much in that there is a true this and a true that can see that everything in a perspective, that you know, things happen and there are reasons why things happen, and if I can deal with it, it's not a big deal. Right? When we can see things like that, I think it's helpful. So we can think about the nature of the mind. We can think about the impermanent nature of the mind, how everything comes and goes and how everything passes, and that, you know, the event, whatever is difficult for us, happens because of impermanence, but also the solution also comes from impermanence, right? Today is the worst day. The day that it happens is the worst day. So from there, it only will get better. With illness, I'm not sure if I can say that. I do think, you know, that when we get a diagnosis of an illness, in the beginning, it is extremely upsetting. And then after some time, we get used to it. And then we can find a space that we think, even if we think, how can I live the rest of my life most meaningful? How can I make the rest of my life most bearable and livable and worthwhile and meaningful? You know, that is already a change that can happen. So the mind adjusts, the mind get used to it, even to horrible diagnosis, the mind get used to it. And then we can think, you know, this is something that Lama Zopa often said, that if we look into what is happening to us in the context of many lifetimes, you know, then this event is extremely small and really not that important, you know. This has happened many, many times to us. And if we can use what happens to us for our practice, that is the main thing, you know, it is an opportunity for practice. If we look into many lifetimes, we have been ill many times. We have died many times. We have been killed many times. We have all that happened many, many times. So if we can really make that big, big perspective, then whatever is happening in this life is tiny, is small, right? And when we can make it more small, the mind will subdue. The mind will stop making it a big thing. Right? It's not a big deal. So we can think about karma, but again, we have to really understand karma in its essence, that it is not a punishment, but it is something that happens due to causes and conditions, and that not every negative experience is a, you know, we sometimes think, oh, that says something bad about me. It can also be, I mean, we all have done a lot of bad stuff. Right? In the past, we all have been killers, we all have been robbers, we all have been everything that you can imagine. So a negative event that happens, or even, also an illness or something that is debilitating you, or that can be just a sign that all that negative karma is purifying instantly, all of that. And you don't know what it saves you from, maybe lifetimes in hell. And so once that is purified, it's purified. Then when we really purify the lower realms in this human body, there's only one way that we can go. We can only go up. And so we go through the Lamrim, the karma, then we can think about refuge. We can think about all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas who are there to help us, whose wish it is to free us from suffering. So when we are suffering and we call them out, they will be there to help us. We can think about our teachers. We can do Guru Yoga practice, in order to meld our mind with the mind of our teachers, so that we feel their connection, that we feel their presence. All that can help us to have faith that what we are experiencing right now is not it. It's just a small event in the big picture, right? For our small mind, sometimes it looks like this is it. My life is over. I'm over. It's like everything is gone. But in the big picture, if we can see that. So step back in terms of time, step back in terms of space. And then try to do not just what is good for you, but try to do whatever is good for sentient beings, whatever is most beneficial for sentient beings. And so Lama Zopa often said that, right? Even when we are sick, even when we're going to die, think about it, that may whatever happen be of most benefit to sentient beings, or whatever is of most benefit to sentient beings, may that happen to me. Right? And so then we dedicate our life to all sentient beings. And then whatever happens to us is going to be, our mind will be in a virtuous state. And that will only bring more happiness in the future. All right. Maybe I'll look for another question or a comment. Isara has his hands up. Could you please elaborate? You can.
Yes. I had a question regarding to what you said about the difference between self-centeredness and self-compassion.
Yes.
Sometimes when I find it hard to put it in words in the chat. So sometimes when I don't get enough time to practice, or when I don't know, my day goes and I didn't practice, I sometimes find myself a lot of in self-guilt, or as you said, punishing myself about it. And I wonder what will be the good balance between self-compassion and also the discipline, or the attention I need to put to get in practice.
So have you learned self-discipline by beating yourself up?
No.
How have you learned self-discipline?
By encouraging good deeds or good habits.
Okay, so how come that you don't have an inner voice that encourages you, but makes you feel guilty when you are not able to engage in the practice?
I don't know. It's kind of not a routine, but also a habit.
It's a habit, yes.
A habit of the mind.
A habit of the mind, yes. And so, but if you have been taught to, or you, what I understand from you is that people around you encourage you to, in helping you to become disciplined, right? They didn't punish you, but you punish yourself
Yeah, mostly.
So it's a little bit weird, no? It's like you do internally something different than that what you actually learned by example. Yeah, so I'm not sure. You can think about many things, right? You can analyze. You have to analyze your mind, and you have to sit with your mind and see where that punishment is coming from, but also what kind of belief is behind that, and what kind of expectations that you have from yourself, because sometimes we think, to be a good Dharma practitioner, I need to do this and this and this and this and this. And if I do not do all that, I'm not a good Dharma practitioner, right? So you already have determined that before you start doing anything. And then due to circumstances, you are not able to do it. And then you start beating yourself up. You're not a good Dharma practitioner. You should have done that, right? But if we really practice Dharma, you can make Dharma from every minute in your life. You do not have to sit down and do your practice. So if the condition arises that you cannot do your practice, then you say, oh, today it's not a day to do this kind of practices, but I will use the rest of my day in my normal activities to practice Dharma anyway. Right?
Yeah, I see.
So then nothing is lost.
Yeah.
No time is lost.
Like
so
every minute.
What?
Every minute you can practice.
Well, then you're going to say every minute. So if I don't do it every minute, I'm going to beat myself up. But also,
it's like every minute you have the opportunity.
Every minute we can have the opportunity to practice Dharma, and every minute we can make our life most beneficial to all sentient beings. And every minute we can think, may my activity be of greatest benefit to all sentient beings. Right? And then in order to be able to engage in the Dharma practice, we also have to, to take in consideration that for many lifetimes, we trained into having a distracted mind, having a mind that wants to run away, having a mind that doesn't want to sit with the suffering. And now you say, and now I'm just going to do all of that. But the mind is going to reject. The mind is going to say, no way,
Yeah.
And then you beat yourself up, which makes it even more unattractive to become a Dharma practitioner. So I would say put that stick down and you do what you can. And yes, in the beginning, our Dharma practice might look messy and not complete. But it doesn't mean that you're a bad person. It doesn't mean that you're not doing it good enough. It doesn't mean nothing like that. It just means that you don't have that yet because the mind is so used to a different habit. So be kind and gentle to yourself, also with respect to being able to do Dharma practice.
Okay. Thank you very much. Yeah. It helped a lot. Thank you.
Good. I have many days that I think, oh, I'm such a useless practitioner, But then I have to remember that I do other things, and I don't have to sit on my cushion in order to practice Dharma, and I do not have to, I engage in things that I find very difficult, and so then I also have reactions to that, and but I just keep going, and things change. And sometimes things become more easy, and sometimes things, stay difficult, and just we keep applying ourselves. However I can, and I don't comment on it like, is this good enough or not? It's good enough. I do my very best, and that is good enough. That's all I can do. And if I look back and I think, could I have done more? And I can say, no, I could not have done more. Then that's it. That's the max we can do. And we have to say that's good enough. We are in degenerate times. It's extremely difficult to apply the Dharma to generate virtuous states of mind. And so even if we have a little bit of virtue in the mind, it's already fantastic. I see another question with respect to illness and how that is connected to delusions. I did last month 3 teachings on healing the mind for Shantideva Center in New York. So I would say have a look at that and see if that helps you. There might be some answers for you, and also how to be with illness. Let me see. May I ask you advice? Unintentionally cause someone emotional distress by something I said. Yeah, sometimes that happens. What can I do? And I can't read the Italian. I'm very sorry. What can you do when you cause people emotional distress? You know, you can just look into your own mind and see, did I do something wrong in the sense that, did I have an intention to hurt that person? Did I have an intention to upset that person? Did I have, and if you feel like, no, I didn't, I just said something and I was coming from a good intention, and then the other person gets distressed, that is the other person, right? It's like out of our power. We cannot do anything about that. And even if we see that, oh, that was not clever to say, you know, then it doesn't mean that we can repair it. I had it this week happening, you know, that I missed a catch up with someone, and then I said, I'm so sorry, I messed up the time, I thought you were calling, whatever, and then I hear nothing back, and I'm also in the distress, like, what did I do? You know, it was an accident, I didn't do anything on purpose, but I have to leave it, right? I can apologize, I'm really sorry, not my intention, I hope we can, you know, meet each other at another time. And then I have to let it go. Even if it is someone who is very dear to me, I have to let it go. And I hope that, you know, maybe in a few weeks, or maybe next year, or maybe there will be an opportunity that there is a connection again. I might reach out in a few more weeks and say, you know, can we please have a conversation? And that's all I can do. Right? And then we have to let it go. Then we have to also check and say, from my side, I have done everything I can, and then we have to drop it. It's not your concern, you know. There are 2 people here that are part of it, and sometimes, you know, we don't know why that separation happens. We don't know why that distress happens in the other person. Maybe they're going to learn something very precious in dependence on that. You know, so give them the space to experience that, you know, give them the space. Okay. All right. Let me see where the time is. We're almost at what time is it? 2 o'clock. So what if we round up a little bit, and I give you a little summary of what we have been doing, and then you can take that home. And I hope you can do something with that. You know? So first we looked into the things that are challenging, what can be challenging to us and what it does to us. And we spoke about how we then react, and how the coping mind is trying to help us, but it is kind of abiding in the past, or it goes to the future. And by staying there, it makes the mind very clouded and disturbed. And so, unable to bounce back, what we need to do is we need to fully experience whatever we are feeling. We need to digest our experience, and, you know, in order to be able to do that, we need to connect with it, and we need to feel it. And so the way that we do that is with loving kindness and compassion for ourselves, in which we are mindful of what we are feeling, in which we talk kindly and gently with ourselves, and then in which we remind ourselves that we are connected. We are not alone, we are connected. And so then while we are going through the experience, we can then contemplate the nature of reality. We can contemplate the nature of reality in terms of the view, in terms of how things exist. We can think about the impermanent nature of things. We can think about the empty nature of things, that nothing exists in and of itself. And we can also think about the conventional nature of reality, which is that things function in accordance with karma. And as Lama Zopa says, karma is completely unmistaken. Unmistaken. Very precise and unmistaken. So we can think about that. And then once we have the ground under our feet again and we look around, we can see that we are not the only people, that are experiencing trauma, that are experiencing difficulties. And so then we can reach out to other people and we can share whatever we have learned in our experience, not necessarily by telling them, but just being there and being fully present when other people go through difficulties. And I think in order to generate that capacity of bouncing back, the more we understand reality, the more we practice the Dharma, the more we take distance from our own reactive emotional mind, the more we will have the capacity to apply it when things happen to us, So then we become strong. We develop an inner strength. And that an inner strength makes that when things happen, that we can, we have the experience how to connect with suffering, how to connect with pain, how to connect with awful things that happen to us. We have the habit of thinking about the nature of reality. And so then we can put that into practice quite quickly. We already have the quality within us. And so then when we practice it, when things happen to us, we can more quickly bounce back, and that shows that we have built up some kind of inner strength. And so then instead of, that things are putting us down, things become an opportunity to grow even further with all the Dharma practice that we have done. This is a place where we can practice, right? It's like it shows us where we are with our practice. Like His Holiness who says that, I'm looking forward to my death, because in my death, I will be able to see how well I have done my practice. And we can do that same thing with adversity. When unpleasant things happen to us, the way that we can be with that shows how far we are with our practice. It shows our practice. And then when we can come out of very difficult things, and then we can be proud of ourselves and we say, wow, well done, that's quite amazing. And I'm so happy that I have the Dharma in my life and that I have been able to practice this, because I can see that it gives me an inner strength so that I'm not so reactive anymore, and that the way I'm feeling doesn't depend so much anymore on outer conditions. It's coming from inside. And I think that's kind of the quality of bouncing back. And that's, kind of where we can, this is what I can share with you. And I hope that it gives you some tools to take home and to think about, and to, be mainly kind to yourself. Kind to yourself. We're all suffering sentient beings. We all need loving kindness. We all need compassion. And I hope this inspires you to practice that more. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Grazie a lei.
Thank you so much, Venerable Jamyang, for this wonderful session. Thank you so much. I think so
You're
many.
very welcome.
Thank you. Thank
Very
you.
welcome. Thank you for giving me that opportunity.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Wonderful. I said everybody's questions, most people had in their hearts, so we could all look inside and go like, yep.
Yeah.
Yep. We're all with you, Izar. Yep. Thank you.
Just there was a big thunder, so
Wow.
Thank you
Oh,
so much.
Yeah. Are you in Darmstadt?
Auspicious. Good.
Yes,
Thank you.
monsoon is back here. It's very strange. It
Oh,
became
really?
like thick fog, and now, well, it became instantly dark, and now it's a big thunder. So
Wow.
we're gonna have a little bit of much needed water. Here we go,
Wow.
turning it
Wow.
around.
I rejoice.
Yes. Thank you so much, Venerable Jamyang. Always a pleasure having you with us. And please take care. Have good lunchtime.
Thank you.
A good day, and see you very, very soon again at Tushita,
Okay.
I hope.
Yes.
And thank you so much, everybody, for joining. And have a good day, a good evening. And tomorrow we have another amazing guest teacher, Venerable Khalsa Wangmo, Geshe Khalsa Wangmo, talking to us about, I think, dependent arising. Yeah, so please join us again, 5 o'clock again, Indian time, or whatever that is equivalent in your time zone. Thank you so much. See you very soon. Please be well. Be happy. Thank you, Venerable Sayana.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Venerable Sayana. Thank